Hello, so I did the week 10 discussion question today. I'm just going to be doing a little reflection on how I think that I did. So just having a look at the marking criteria, I think I did a very in-depth definition on corporate storytelling and its importance. I defined exactly what it is and why it's effective. In terms of the question, I used correct theoretical concepts. I would say I did a pretty good job. However, after discussing the question in class, Sue did mention the controlled versus uncontrolled factors, which I did not mention. So therefore, I place this mark in the meets expectations column. The case study was integrated really well, in my opinion. I went really into depth about the case study and found its effectiveness. I did address a couple of times why a manager would need to understand this concept throughout the response as well. For the next point, I selected discussion question answered in full could be structured better because Sue went through in class how she would have structured her response, and it does vary. I'll discuss this in a slide later on. But yeah, for the final point in the discussion response question, I circled meets expectation, as I may have gotten slightly carried away with my own opinions rather than authors. And for the use of subject readings and other sources, I think I did pretty well. However, I did only use 5 sources in total and probably could have utilized more academic sources. I did, though, use the readings a lot throughout. In terms of grammar, reading back through it today even, I couldn't find any issues or mistakes, so I would mark this section a 2, which leads me to my final mark of around 11.9 out of 14 for the discussion question. I just thought it would be interesting to have a look at my structure versus how Sue discussed in class that she would have structured the response. So these are my headings on the left. Under corporate storytelling, I covered Sue's definition column, except for the controlled factor, which I discussed earlier, that I unfortunately missed out. The role of corporate stories, I would say, integrated through covering the 4 points. Types of stories I explained in my first section and then applied it to the case study. And why do we need to understand what corporate stories are? This is very similar to my final section of why is corporate storytelling worthwhile, where I covered this content. What I did well, I would say I covered the storytelling concept pretty thoroughly and integrated the case study into the concept quite well. And I also discussed internal and external stakeholders throughout and the impact storytelling has on the various stakeholders. Where I could improve on, I would say I could have explored the theory further. As I've already discussed, I missed an important aspect, the controlled versus uncontrolled factor. I may have gotten a bit carried away with the case study. However, I do think storytelling was integrated quite well into this, so it's a bit of a 50-50. And in terms of sources, I only used 5, so I possibly could have expanded on that and maybe used more academic and recent sources. Yeah, thank you for listening.